So with the Storypath Ultra crowdfunding campaign still going on, link down below, I decided to cover Trinity Continuum Aether, and if you are unfamiliar with it, it is essentially a Victorian era sci-fi game with the Trinity Continuum universe. There are stuff like Penny Dreadful-like themes, as well as Martian invasions and a lot of other stuff. Honestly, there's something here that you're going to like. I almost guarantee it. So Trinity Continuum Aether is based on the Trinity Continuum core rules, so you'll need a copy of that as well to play. As I said before, the setting is Victorian era with a lot of classical literature and fiction, sci-fi fiction influences in there as well, such as Frankenstein, Dracula, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, and a bunch of H.G. Wells type stuff like War of the Worlds. It uses the D10 system that is used for other Trinity Continuum games. So if you're familiar with like Vampire the Masquerade, Vampire the Requiem, Chronicles of Darkness, World of Darkness, this system is similar to those, though it is Onyx Path's own system. Trinity Continuum right now has about 8 game lines covering different eras of the Trinity Continuum universe. At one point, I'm going to do a lore video about it, but know that essentially everything that is in there that is sort of supernatural has a scientific explanation. So starting off, Trinity Continuum Aether occurred when Tesla decided to start looking into this energy he found that he dubbed Aether. And this allowed him to do many different things, which involved a lot of jumping dimensions to other worlds, essentially, and even to travel between different planets. Now, for some reason, Tesla thinks it's a good idea to keep doing this, even though I think at least 2 people who have worked on projects like this have disappeared on multiple occasions. Or like one person got disappeared into a pocket dimension, another person has not been seen from or heard from since. But in any case, Tesla's still doing it, which is stupid. Stop it, Tesla. Please stop it, Tesla. In any case, these events that happen are called etheric events. They're essentially stuff like the city of Atlantis, which may be a strange place now that I think about it, but essentially people creating technology that can do stuff that's sort of impossible. The boots from Spring Heel Jack that can jump really high. Someone creates a death laser and points it at the moon or something like that. These are all events that are created by Aether or the use of Aether. So this is what you would be known as spinning. You spin an etheric event to happen. So you create a device that summons spirits and stuff in a room. Then there's stuff like unwinding, which is the undoing of etheric events. And you can even do some time traveling to a little bit of an extent. Depending on how complex the events can be, the time travel might not be very effective or be too difficult to do. One example that they do talk about, or at least Matthew Dawkins mentioned on Discord, was that the Martian invasion is an event that got unwound or was caused by unwinding, where essentially the event happened and then someone did some unwinding and made it so it didn't happen. And so no one remembers that it happened, but there's still like a chunk of time where there was a war that happened in the past, but no one can remember what that war was about or who with, which is kind of a weird thing, but it's an interesting part of the lore that is interesting because you have Edison in opposition to Tesla going around unwinding events because people are using Aether irresponsibly. In any case, the last thing I'm going to be talking about, the Martians invade Earth. This is very similar to the War of the Worlds story. If you have heard of the radio program of War of the Worlds, that's sort of basically what happens, and it's based off of the H.G. Wells novels, but it happens. And there is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek moment in the lore where they say that there's a group that actually writes down and chronicles all these weird events, but people sort of think that it's all fictitious, even though it's true. So that's why we have all these pulp and Penny Dreadful novels from that era, because this one group was chronicling it and just no one believed it. If you're looking to make a website, look no further than Shaw Web Design. They're sponsoring this video, and they even made me a website, though I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Please check it out in the link below, and please leave a comment telling me what I should do with this website. There are 3 main character type templates that are added into this game. You've got the Squires, who are essentially your talents from the core rulebook. They do have a few modifications to them. Specifically, they don't use flux to power their abilities. Instead, they're using Aether. And then you have the possibility of them becoming Gogs or Magogs if they decide to use Aether in a different way. You have the Gogs, who are people who are essentially alchemists, I would say. They are people who manipulate Aether through the use of apparatus, which are essentially devices. So this is your like Warehouse 13. They have a Tesla gun type thing. But the thing is that the reason the Tesla gun or like a lightning gun would work for them is because they're able to manipulate like how physics work through the manipulation of Aether, even though they don't realize they're doing it in that way. So they don't need the device to actually do it, but in channeling it through the device, it allows them essentially to do these crazy things that a normal person wouldn't be able to. Then you have the Magogs, who are sort of your like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, vampire type people who have decided, hey, what if I inject myself with Aether and or take it in some way? It doesn't have to be an injection. It could be any number of ways. But basically, they start to manipulate reality with Aether from within their body, and they turn into creatures like vampires, werewolves, even Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type people. Essentially, they get this mutation because they're manipulating Aether without an apparatus. Changes to the rules that I'm not going to be covering in this regard, but essentially each of these character types interacts with the rules slightly differently. So for instance, I believe Squires are allowed to do more of the dramatic editing or etheric editing, as it's called in this game, whereas Gogs and Magogs, it costs a little bit more because they consciously have to use Aether in order to do that type of stuff. So, like, Squires don't really see themselves as manipulating Aether when they're doing this, but they are doing it. It's just not as conscious for them to do it. So there are some new rules in the game. You have the Aether Gates, which are your method of travel. You can create a portal that allows you to travel between spaces as well as dimensions. So you can go to the moon or Mars or any of the other places on Earth, or you could go to a parallel Earth where people are different. Maybe they're lizard people running the world instead of normal people. In any case, that's Aether Gates. Usually, if you're creating one, you're like doing a ritual or maybe even like drawing a blood circle with your finger or something to basically open up a portal. If you're a Gog, you might have a device that creates a portal, like a portal gun or something of that nature. And then you have Unwinding Time, which is essentially time travel where there's a sort of a number of complex events that you have to deal with in order to undo something in the past. Unwinding Time, I haven't really gotten into the rules yet, but I think they're pretty cool as far as if you want to do like an H.G. Wells type story, like a time traveler story. In any case, going on, we have Super Science, which allows you to craft items that have like different rules associated with them that are breaking reality, essentially. Examples that they have are sort of like mystical artifacts and items, as well as stuff that's made through Aether, like etheric sciences or etheric devices. I haven't delved too deeply into those, but they're an interesting take and allows you to do stuff like creating super science devices with a little bit of a flaw, a little bit of a Victorian era. There's some downside to it. It's not going to give you something for nothing. That was just my read of it. I might be wrong in my assumption. I sort of went through them. I have played the game before, but I haven't delved into all these optional rules. And you don't have to. If this is overwhelming for you, please feel free to jump to the next slide or chapter. Special environments are really cool. Basically, these are special environments related to what you'd see in like a Penny Dreadful story. You have like Atlantis is there, Dracula's castle. There's the Hollow Earth and Mars. and all this other stuff, which is pretty cool. And then there's some template-specific rules. Gogs and Magogs have their own special thing, but Squires can have like rules for, oh, how does a Squire become a Gog, or how does a Squire become a Magog? And Squires can actually be trained to use apparatus, which when you're a Gog, Gogs have access to apparatus, which you can put certain gifts or abilities into that apparatus so that that apparatus can be then used to mimic that effect. And then you have Magogs who have deviations, which are essentially side effects for them becoming a Magog and being able to use Aether internally. There might be a little bit more rules to this, but those are the general overview of the rules that I found that were new to this and not existing in other Trinity Continuum games. I just want to cover a few of the societies here, the major ones. You have Edisons and Winders, who are basically the people who go around undoing etheric events that are causing harm to people. This is part of Edison being very anti-Tesla. Tesla will like to create new events in order to study them and see what effect it has on the world, whereas Edison's like, no, we need to go back to normalcy. Let's undo that. And then you have the esoteric order of Aeons, who are researchers and chroniclers of etheric events, strange places, and all those things. Strange places being things like Atlantis and the Hollow Earth. They will write stories, put them out to the public to read, but a lot of people think they're so outlandish they have to be fake. Then you have Her Royal Highness's Planetary Defense Pack. They're a group essentially run by the British government who are protecting Earth from extraterrestrial threat. This can be things like meteorites hitting the Earth, but also things of that nature where you have aliens invading and they're anti-aliens. It is still Victorian era, so they are about protecting the British colonies, not really about protecting other people, but if you want to run it a little bit differently, like your character's a little bit sympathetic to other countries, you can still do that. Then you have the Society for the Opposition of Monsters. These are people who have essentially decided that they're going to tackle the monsters that have been created through Aether. These are your vampires, your Dr. Jekylls and Mr. Hydes. Basically, they see that Magogs have these side effects, and some of them, the side effects can be very dangerous to people, innocent people around Magog. So they try and target the people who are malicious, who are Magogs. There is a little bit of how can you have a person who's playing a Society of the Opposition of Monsters with someone who is a Magog? And it does say that they specifically go after Magogs who are criminals, not Magogs who are essentially non-harmful. They won't go after Magogs who are not dangerous. There we go. I said it eventually. Now you have the students of Tesla, who are people from MIT, students from MIT who were enamored by how Tesla was doing stuff with Aether. They did their own studies, and they're sort of your researchers who will go about creating new things with Aether and try and hide from Edison's Unwinders because they don't want their stuff to be undone by the Unwinders. And then you have the Three Prongs, who are people who believe that becoming a Magog is essentially like a next step of ascension or for humanity, and essentially they believe it's a good thing. However, they do believe that there are people who are ascending too quickly, and they use techniques to help people come back and like recover from being a Magog, because they feel that some people aren't ready for that power, and only the people who are ready for that power should have it. And they seem to be very helpful. I haven't delved too much into the history of each one of these, but I really like all 6 of the major ones. I haven't delved too deeply into the minor ones, but they have some interesting ideas as well that would be interesting to go through. So there are a bunch of counter societies, which are sort of your evil organizations or antagonistic organizations. I did want to call out a few, specifically the Immortals, because I have talked about how there are vampires and werewolves and things. And the Immortals and Dr. Jekyll's Explorers of the Unknown are essentially like the supernatural element of Aether, which is really cool for for me. If I were to play, like, looking at the image that is currently on the screen right now above my head, that is essentially to me like what I imagine when I think of a vampire like gathering. And I like the idea that I can take Trinity Continuum Aether and turn it into sort of like a vampire type game or a supernatural urban fantasy type game in Victorian era, which is awesome. If you're running Aether, I highly suggest that you pick the genre you want to do first, especially if you're talking with your players. You want to decide if you're doing something that's horror, steampunk, more Victorian era, like mystery, or a Martian invasion. There are a lot of things that you can do other than that, but those are like the main ones I feel like Aether touches on the most. Then you also have stuff like the figuring out the scale of the game that you're going to be doing. The game really seems like it's meant to be built around globetrotting, like going from country to country, but you could make it only like located at a single town or city. I do like the strange places because they give a bit of a different take on the setting. So you could say, oh, we're going to start in Atlantis, or we're going to start at Dracula's castle. And it has a completely different feel than starting in London or on Mars. Additionally, I feel like you need to talk to your players a little bit about the societies they join, because a lot of the societies have conflict with each other, which can be seen as a rivalry in some cases, but for things like the Edison Unwinders and the students of Tesla, you might see a lot more friction there, as well as possibly the three prongs with the SOM, the Society Against Monsters, opposition against oppositional monsters. I forget the term. It's continue. In any case, so we have those. Make sure you talk to your players about the societies they're in and why they have an exception for dealing with someone of the opposite society, just in case you have a player who says, oh, I'm with SOM, which means I'm going to hate talking to the people from Three Prong because we have counter beliefs when it comes to Magogs. So if I'm running Aether, I'm going to be probably setting it in London because I really like that aesthetic. But also, I'm going to have it center around an investigation of various Magogs who are killing people in the city. The players are going to be a sort of multidisciplinary task force from different groups. And that way I'll like make sure to say, yeah, you guys are all working together, but that's because they need so many different people with different expertises just to make sure that they're covering all their bases. And that way we can have them working maybe with the city or something. And that way we can cover stuff like the Magogs trying to kill people in the city. And maybe one of the Magogs was created through the use of Martian technology or extraterrestrial technology, which brings in the anti-alien group. There are not too many actual plays for Trinity Continuum Aether that I could find. Most of them are from Onyx Path, and you can find them in the link down in the description. I really like both of them. One of them is on the Gentleman Gamers Matthew Dawkins YouTube page, so please check that out if you can. There's a lot of media recommendations I can make for this game. You have Sherlock Holmes, War of the Worlds, Journey to the Center of the Earth, Picture of Dorian Gray, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, The Invisible Man. And when I'm mentioning those, I don't mean just like the TV show or movie or whatever that's up here. I haven't even seen the Disney version of the Journey to the Center of the Earth, but I'm not sure how good it is. In any case, you can check out stuff like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or Van Helsing, and that'll give you a sense for how this Aether could be run. I really like the horror elements, so I kind of am highlighting the more horror type stuff that's out there. But maybe Penny Dreadful, the TV show, would be good for you, or any of the other things that are out there. You can, if you're looking for something that's sort of like Victorian era sci-fi or fantasy, I think that would be a good start for any sort of Trinity Continuum Aether game that you'd want to get off the ground. Please let me know in the comments below if you want to run Aether as horror, maybe Martian invasion sci-fi, or steampunk. Just put that in the comments below. Steampunk, horror, or Martians. Those are the three genres. In any case, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a good one, and I'm going to put a video up here about Storypath Ultra if you want to check that out. Have a good one.